Welcome back to another episode of Digging Deeper Ag Chats with Al. In this special two-part episode, we're bringing you both market smarts and on-farm science. First up, Morgan Davies, who returns for his regular monthly livestock update, diving into what's moving in the markets in sheep, lamb and cattle. He even briefly touches on wool and how recent contracts are shaping up and where he sees value in the current climate. Then, in part 2, I'm joined by Gippsland Ag CEO Trevor Kaus, who gives us a rapid-fire update on what's happening at the research farm. From promising results in our long-term lime trial to early wins in the Grow More Topsoils project. We'll also update you on early progress of the cereal trials and how it's looking like it's going to be a good year this year. So sit back and enjoy. Let's dig in. Welcome everyone listening to Digging Deeper. We have Morgan Davies here for another podcast. Welcome, Morgs.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks for having me, listeners. It's our third one now and starting to get the hang of it, Al. We are building a following too. A good client of mine from Anzac, Barry Newcomen, is your biggest fan, Al. Doesn't think much of me, but he really likes you, Al.
So we'll sell him some merchandise you can send up with you next time you go up there, Morgs.
Yeah, we'll get him a gag shirt. It'd be an extra small, I think, for Barry. You know, if he got to a small, we'd be excited.
How did the sales go up there this year for Barry?
I think he had a pretty good result. His cattle are obviously outstanding, and it was always a solid result with Barry's cattle, and they always present very well. But like all those Anzac calves, they had a pretty good day on the day. Yeah,
and how's the season for Anzac looking? Are they just hanging in still, are they, or are they dry?
No, they're good. Anzac and Omeo, Anzac's probably having one of their best seasons, most mild seasons they've had in a long time, and Omeo looks okay, not as good as Anzac, but Anzac's the pick of it up there. The Buchan looks pretty well too. But you further out you go, seems to get dry. Like Banama's doing it really, really tough. They're struggling big time.
I heard some guys are starting to feed out already up there. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're already talking a long cold winter, and not much we can do about it, really.
We hope things turn around. We're actually sitting in the podcast studio. It's actually raining outside here in East Gippsland, so I know I'm always in a better mood when we've got some rain at the right time. So,
we've had a fantastic, consistent season. I suppose it dries out a little bit and everyone starts to panic, but it actually rains sometimes. It's not the case. But anyway, bring it on.
We're having a great start to the season, so a lot of confidence around the industry at the minute in our area.
Definitely.
Now, more importantly, Morgs, last time you were on, you were talking about local footy. The boys are about to have their first game. How'd they go?
Yeah, we've had 2 games now, under 11s, undefeated so far. There's a fair bit of head wobble getting around there. At the moment, we've got the Bensdale dead legs this Sunday. So we'll see how that goes. The under-11 clash of the Titans.
Is that the top of the table clash, is it?
At the moment, yeah. So
where's that getting? Home or away?
Home game at Lindenow. So we'll have to keep them off the cokes and the lemonades on Saturday night. And we'll bet early and the boys will be primed.
Yeah, spaghetti bolognese on Saturday night. So
no nuggets and chips. That's right.
Yeah. Any star recruits? I heard there might be a couple of star recruits coming to join the ranks.
Well, there's the McAuliffe kids. I think they're on board. They see a couple of wins and they're there. But we're looking forward. We could take anyone. We'll take anyone out of Lindenow. But our footy club's got a great junior program, so bring it on.
All right, something we haven't touched on, Morgs, yet, the wool job. Now, you're not a woolly yourself,
no.
But what can you tell us so far about the wool current conditions and anything that's happening right now with the wool?
Well, I've had the inside scoop from Madison Gallagher. She's our Elders wool rep. She said, look, we haven't had any markets for a couple of weeks.
Easter break
and everything else that occurred, so they stopped the markets. The drop of the Aussie dollar is going to put a bit of pressure on it somewhere. Having said that, she said there's going to be a lot less bales of wool from here on out sold in the next month or so that should minimise the pressure. So she thinks it might soften a little bit, but it'll be okay.
Yeah.
In the long, a lower dollar does usually help us on most export products, Matty said.
We're pretty low at the minute, aren't we?
Yeah. We don't want to go too far, but anyway, a nice little bit in the middle. Mid-50s is somewhere pretty good for the Aussie dollar. I want it too much over mid-60s to high 60s, especially for the beef job, and we haven't really seen it get much under 50 cents, so mid-50s is okay.
Now, talking about the Aussie dollar and market swings, what's been happening with the markets recently?
Yeah, look, again, it's all shut down through numbers and these public holidays, which I hope everyone had a great break, and it's just going to take a little bit to get back online. I think a lot of the processors found it hard. shutting off and things like that and keeping the wheels in motion. So it's all just starting to take shape this week. Everything has trended dearer, really. Not necessarily your store cattle, your restocking cattle, which we'll touch on down the track, but definitely your sheep and lamb have been significantly dearer this week. There's a lot of lamb that have been booked in for the previous month still to be processed, but in the markets, as a rule, have been significantly dearer. Sheep look considerably dearer, making sort of $30 to $70 more than what they did 2 weeks ago. So I think this sheep...
Finished sheep, or is this any sheep at the minute?
Most types of sheep, yeah. Maybe your lighter sheep, not so much. If you're talking cents per kilo and the sheep are light, it's still not a lot of money, but most sheep are 80, light sheep are 80 to $90. Heavy sheep up to 180, 190. So it's pretty considerable, really. Like, that's could be 25%. But we've seen that, the big swings happening in sheep and lamb in the market probably for the past 2 years, 3 years, and no one can really give us an answer why, but it's basically based around, in my opinion, these big centres, Bendigo, Ballarat, Wagga, which seems to be the dearest sheep market in the country, seem to, if they get big numbers, the sheep price, there can be 20 and 30,000 sheep, the sheep price can swing either way, and we've seen that, especially when Wagga hits on a Thursday, and then it hits again at Bendigo and Ballarat on a Monday, Tuesday the following week. So we do see these massive big price swings.
And so we just filling up the abs too much is just
create a glut for ourselves. Yep, but I do think 2026 and 7 probably looks pretty good for sheep and lamb. There's been a lot of sheep sold, and there's been a lot of pressure on the marketplace. I think that might be subdued a little bit. So hopefully it's back in the cocky's corner.
Yeah, now just on the sheep job / lamb job, I heard the other day that we've got a new contract with China, or some big processor contract with China. Am I making this up? Was I dreaming the other night, or is this...
No, you're right. Like, there's, I think we look at our phones, and our phones will tell us what we want to hear a lot of the time, but there is, consistent reports out everywhere that we are selling more and more sheep meat into China. Obviously not a huge amount, probably a lot in comparison to what there has been in the past. But yeah, it's our basic sheep areas where we go is into the Middle East and things like that, where a lot of sheep goes, slaughtered sheep as well, not just obviously your export sheep, which is a totally different thing that we don't really roll in Victoria. But yeah, there's more and more sheep getting exported into the Middle East all the time. So I think that's the big thing to watch.
Yeah. And now lambs are ticking along okay still?
Yeah, lambs, $8 to $9 really, mid-8s. In the marketplace, and your contract at the moment this week's $8.40, so it's all pretty good, and bouncing along. I think it will, as number supply and shortage drops off. They're screaming out for store lambs, obviously, so that says to me that in the middle of the year we're going to see +9, maybe even 10. But that's not my call.
Is it going to? When are the paddock lambs going to drop off?
Yeah, now.
Now,
as it gets colder now and drier now, a lot of those lambs are gone. The Western District's still tight enough in the season, as you know, and a lot of people start jumping on headers around Anzac Day, not headers, drills and disking and drilling and spraying and doing whatever they're doing over there. So a lot of those lambs are out of the way. So now a lot of the lambs that are coming in fat are all fed lambs. So yeah, I think that the store lambs will minimise. There'll be less and less of them and less quality. And your good fat lambs and heavy lambs will really start to bounce into those big price increases.
Yeah. Yeah, we've still got a couple of lambs around, so you get me excited.
Put the dogs around a Mel.
Yeah. Cattle.
Cattle.
What can you tell us about the beef cows?
Yeah, look, well, we'll start with the cows. The beef jobs, it's all good. It's all just opening up again. Over the hooks, you can get $6.30 to $6.40 or $6.50 for a heavy cow. That's this week. Who knows? I think... as numbers subside again, there'll be more and more pressure. So those better cows are going to keep making that money. And it looks pretty consistent as we head through the year that there's not going to be oversupply. A lot of those big dairy choppers are out of the way and all those cattle are out of the way. So nose to the grindstone through the middle of the winter, I think we're going to see some pretty good pricing all the way through. You contract cattle. There's some big contracts for cattle coming out for the midwinter. Some have filled and some haven't. Still all hinging on what's going on. This time a month ago, we were talking about JBS and all the uncertainty about Donald and his tariffs. Everyone's just settled and it's business as usual again. So they need supply, and talk to your reputable agent that you use. And if you've got fat stock coming through the middle of winter, start making some decisions now, because I don't think it's a bad idea just to lock in or be across what's coming up heading into the winter.
So just wind back a bit more, because I'm not a cattle person as much as a sheep person. When you talk contract cattle, what exactly are you talking about?
Yeah, you're yearling cattle. You're yearling sort of 18 to 24 or 28 months old. Here in East Gippsland and Gippsland, as a rule, there's grass-fed programs. Every processor has one. And your JBS, your AMG, Greenham, Tees, and everyone else in between has got a grass-fed program. So when I say contract cattle, most of these crowds all put out pretty good winter pricing to buy those cattle, coals, in the middle of winter. The pricing is all much of a muchness. So it starts now, and sometimes we see in the middle of the year when supply runs really short, they get, those big increases and transitions in these contract cattle. You can lock in early, or you can just play the market.
How far out can we lock in contracts?
A lot of the time you can lock it out to, August. I think back end of August.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you can, but in that you have to supply.
Yeah.
You can't just book them in. The cattle aren't ready yet. I want to get them heavier. If you lock in ethically, you've got to supply those cattle. Like ethically, if they commit to you on a price, they have to pay you. So yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted a lot of the time, but it's good business if you lock in your 60% of your business into contracts, and then you can swing on the others or whatever you want to do. But there are contract cattle out there. It's good. It is going to be a pretty good year for that, and they've already offered pretty significant prices. So
and so your recommendation, if you know your business well, what cattle are you going to have at what stage? You might look in 50% of them, and then hedge your bets with the other ones. Yeah.
Look, and everyone's different, of course. So you'd have to speak to who advises you or whatever you do, but. Yeah, there's a lot of cattle that you can lock in early, you can lock in late, you can work it out, but you do have to supply at that specific time.
Yep. Now we've got down here feeder cattle.
Yeah, your feeders. Feeder is a steer or a heifer, 380 to 500 kilos. They're looking no dearer really, along with your weaners, because it's dry everywhere else. I know we're still getting rain. We got 15 mil today. It's pretty dry, Rosedale back through Gippsland. You go over the hill, it's dry in the northeast. There's no real increasing in the feeders price because there's pressure on, so people are still having to sell. So that job is no dearer. So it does bode well for someone that can handle cattle at the moment, because you're probably buying them in the exit price will be all right too when they're fat. So yeah, if you can sell now and buy now, it's probably not a bad time to do it really. As we said, the contract cattle you can get $7.80 to $8 and things like that getting floated around. So if you can turn around and buy for the same sort of money, cents a kilo for your weaners or less, it's pretty good dough, really.
Yeah, load up now.
If you can.
Yep. And then you mentioned breeders then. Where are we looking for the
breeders? Core breeders, black cows and calves. Again, because they take such a nutritional requirement heading through the winter, there's a lot of people sort of bit and dicey and nervy on those cows, and they're getting harder to sell, like a good black cow with a little calf at foot, $2,200 to $2,400. That doesn't look like huge money to me, Al. We've seen those cows make $4,000, things like that, in the extreme times, of course.
In the package.
Yeah. In the deal. But those cows, they look okay, priced accordingly. You can buy them for that. Big runs of pregnant heifers and things like that, under $2,000, $1,600 to $1,700 or $1,800 to calve in the spring, or they value for money, I think, if you can run those cattle on. So it's all trending pretty well in terms of the buying and trading, if you've got feed. And if you've got the capabilities to do it, it looks okay.
Yep. Now, if it doesn't rain, what are prices going to do? We're going to run out of cows eventually.
Are we?
Well, despite the numbers at the minute, it looks like we're going to need more beef and more lamb. But if it doesn't rain, what happens?
Well, you've got to sell or feed, or you've got to make decisions on your own.
Prices.
Pricing, I think the global requirement for beef is extreme, and is going to continue to be that way. Who knows what the US do? We've got a lot of other areas that Australia can sell their beef. It all bodes very well. The issue was 2-3 years ago when we stopped selling beef globally. Our beef was the dearest in the world. Now it halved again, and put us back on a pretty level playing field with a low Aussie dollar. Probably makes our beef look quite competitive, or beef or protein look quite competitive. So all these international buyers can step in at our rate and buy the product, plus we can supply them. So I think it's all boding very, very well. It's an exciting time to be in the Australian protein industry, I suppose.
Yeah. Now, give us your red hot tip, Morgs. Where's the value at the minute? What class of livestock, if you sat down, you got a bit of grass, what are you going out and buying? Now, don't just be biased towards your cows, by the way. I know you're a cow man.
I am a cow man. Look, everything, to me, I know it sounds like a typical agent, which is what I am, and I'm proud to be one. People say, I'd say there's a lot of value in all the stock that you can buy. You just got to buy the right ones.
Yeah.
And you've just got to be street smart on where you're shopping, how you buy them. Store cows look pretty cool to me at the moment. $2.80 or $90 or something for a store cow. With store cow being a young cow that's vetted empty or something like that you can either rejoin or fatten again. Because if you get a heavy and fat straight away, if you look over there making $6.40 or $50 or $3.50 in the market, so that presents as pretty good buying opportunity. On the sheep front, yeah, a merino with a jacket of wool on it and a big border lamb inside it would be all right, wouldn't it? Whether or not you can run them through the winter and feed them and keep merinos alive, that's the different story.
Not even the good farmers can do that.
Well, we shouldn't joke about that, but look.
That's where my money is. I reckon they're very undervalued at the minute, the merino ewe with a bit of wool and lamb. I reckon there's, if you've got the knowledge and the ability to put the work into them, I reckon there's good potential there. But in this climate, in a wet winter, she will be tough.
It is going to be tough, it is tough. But, in your drier winters, sheep seem to perform better in too. These wet winters that we roll through in East Gippsland can be quite tough, so... But no, I do think a jacket of wool and a border lamb or something underneath it inside is a pretty good result. And I think this sheep job's going to bounce and move from here. I think there's been a lot of sheep sold in the past. So who knows what happens down the track. But all we can do is trade in what we can see in at the moment.
Now, last question, Morgs, a signature question. What's something you've learnt that surprised you this last month?
Yeah. Does it have to be ag-based, Al, or not?
No, not at all. No, if you were listening to the podcast, you'll know this. We actually had someone say that echidnas can live to 40 years old, so
right,
that was one of them.
Well, I'm an echidna then.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to just say this: don't boo at Anzac Day events, no matter who you are or what political agenda you have. Don't boo at Anzac Day events.
Yeah, right. Is it personal experience, you think?
No, not really. I just think it's the right thing what the Anzacs have done and what's happened this week. I just think it's just taken away everything that's been great about Anzac Day. Everyone turning and blueing politically, I think it wasn't right. It didn't sit well with me.
No, I can understand that. Well, that'll do us for this one, Morgs.
You cut me off, Al.
No, not cutting you off. I just don't know. I have no military family. Harris and my son actually went to the Anzac parade this time. It was the first parade I've actually been to. More to supporting him. And I was a little bit moved by some of the people there because it means a lot to some of these people that have military people in their family. A lot of people have sacrificed a lot, and although I've got no personal connection to it, I guess I'm grateful for it, and I understand where you're coming from. Even just a sign of respect for other human beings and what they're going through, whether it be Anzacs or a whole bunch of other things. I think that we can do a better job as a society and a community.
Yeah, we don't have to make everything political. It just Anzac Day is a great thing, and all that really flashed out of it was just these knuckleheads flying their own political agenda. But in the end, to me, I think it's one of the great things that Australia does. And Anzac Day, to me and my family's, we're making it special because we think it's very important. So anyway, that's what I've learnt for the week. That's what surprised me for the week. And I just thought, oh, bugger it, that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, we'll put it out there and hopefully get some comments. I'd like to hear what we can be doing better. That's for everyone that's listening. Please put in your questions, and Morgs will be in next month. If you've got some questions, send them in to me because we can ask Morgs anything, and while we've got him here, he'll do his best to answer it.
Thank you, listeners, and thank you very much, Al.
That was Morgan Davies with a livestock update for the month of April, brought to you from Elders Bensdale. We're now going to swing over to Trevor Kaus, who's a volunteer CEO. He's going to share a few of the projects on the go here at the research farm, so stay tuned. Welcome, listeners, to Dig In Deeper. We've got a special part 2 to this episode today. We've got the big boss in, Ken Kaus, with his son, Trevor Kaus. So welcome, guys.
Thanks, Al.
Hi, Al.
Now, Ken, can you tell me where you've just come from? You've come up from South Gippsland to see a bit of green country.
Yes, Alistair, it's usually the other way around, but this year, no, it's just beautiful to come up and see some feed in abundance. It's so often South Gippsland's all smiling, and you guys up here are just, scratching for every blade of grass you can find. But yes, it's a true...
So tell the listeners, please, Ken, where you are from.
Okay, well, I was born in Leongatha in 1938, and I've lived in South Gippsland all my life. I only moved about 2 kilometres up the road from my parents' property when my wife and I married in 1963, and been there ever since. We moved on to a 330-acre bush block, pretty heavy bush it was at that time too, and I was a bulldozing contractor back in those days, and land clearing and all that sort of thing. So I did have the gear to develop that property, and sold it to my youngest son, Alan, about 12 years ago, and just retired into Leongatha. So I haven't gone very far.
Oh, so you become a city cocky now.
Yes, I'm a townie, and quite enjoying it too, actually. It's very convenient, and just in a little 2-bedroom unit, which is adequate for me and suits me fine.
Now, we could talk all day because I've got a few stories. We actually spent a little time with Toby up in the air. Apparently you built that aeroplane, I hear.
I built that aeroplane in my spare time, which was pretty scarce. Most people build their planes in about 3 to 4 year bracket, but it took me 8 years, and I was quite involved with building our local church in the middle in that 8-year period too. So we had a couple of years of pretty constant working bees as well. So it's been a bit of a journey, but probably the most satisfying little project I've ever taken on, and that's 40-something years ago now, and that aeroplane's still flying, so it's obviously stood the test of time anyway.
Yeah, so you still fly, do you?
Unofficially.
Oh, we better scratch that from the recording. When is the last time you went up with Toby?
Probably 6 months ago. He was going up to Marlow to pick up one of his spreader drivers, and went along for the ride. Yes.
Yeah. That's it. My son is now addicted to aeroplanes and flying, and he's actually on the internet the night after and had a shopping list of aeroplanes he wanted to buy. So he's only 12, but I reckon he'll be looking forward to his 14, because I think that's when they can start flying.
Yeah, well, I think it is 14 they can start their training. Yes, that's right. And I think you can hold a licence at 16 if think I'm right there. Yeah.
Yes, I know that, because you can legally fly an aeroplane before it can drive on the road,
that's
which
right.
is a scary thought, but also exciting. So we've also got Trevor, your son, and you've just come back from a block, a bit of a pasture walk. What can you tell us about down there? What have you learned today?
Yeah, well, look, we've just had a quick look over that Ashley Park property that we purchased about 6 months ago and put it into a pretty severe development program. And just an amazing body of feed we've got down there, Al. It's been sown into a mixture of oats, red wheat, some Italian clover, some Italian ryegrass, and some arrowleaf clover. And we've got a big body of feed, so we'll start stocking that tomorrow, start carting steers down to that place.
So when was it sown, sorry?
That was sown early in March.
Yeah. Is that traditionally a bit earlier than you'd normally go?
It's probably a bit earlier, but because that place does have a couple of centre pivot irrigators on it, we thought we'd take the chance and get it in early, and we could turn the pivots on and water it up if we had to.
Haven't needed to just yet?
No, we've been very blessed. I think we've only done about a lap of the pivot, and the rest of it's all come from the heavens above. Yeah.
And so what was the rough calculations? How many steers did you think you'll take down there?
Yeah, look, I think we'll up the stocking rate because it's probably going to need, I'd say about 2.5 steers to the hectare on it. The time we grazed in a rotation, otherwise I just don't think we'll get on top of the feed.
Yeah.
So there's a big body of feed over it now. If you had some cages, you could do some dry matter cuts, but yeah, there would have to be sort of 4 or 5 tonne of dry matter to the hectare on a lot of it now. So
yeah, and it's still got a fairly good growing window just while the soil's warm.
Yeah, it has, Al, and It's interesting, the sort of the mix of having some oats in there along with some winter red wheat. The red wheat's still sort of getting itself going, but the oats are actually they're right up there, nearly on the verge of putting an ear out in spots. And then the Italian ryegrass, well, it's just coming through. It's a nice thick mat, so the oats will they'll disappear out fairly quickly, and then the later season varieties will just take over, I'd suggest.
Yeah. And so what are your takeaways with your brief time down there? Next year going to look different from your learnings this year?
I think we'll. I think early's everything. If you've got a chance with moisture, and you've got a chance with perhaps being able to put a bit of irrigation on, just getting seed in the ground while that ground's warm, and of course getting a bit of fertility in there with it. It's just amazing how many kilos of dry matter you can grow very early in the autumn, which what that'll do now is it'll lighten the load on the home property, and so that'll really sort of get us a good body of feed coming into winter, I'd say.
Yeah. Now, a few of the guys that gone early this year have had a fair bit of black beetle pressure. Have you seen much of that down there, or?
We've had a bit of pressure there. It's interesting, they seem to have attacked the cereals more than the ryegrasses, and I haven't sprayed anything. I think we'll be pretty right now. My experience is as the ground temperature starts to cool down a little bit, the insect beetle pressure seems to settle right down. So I'd say we'll be pretty right.
Now, the second part of this podcast is actually just do a bit of a quick update on some of the trials that's happening here at Gippsland Ag. We've got a couple of things that we're going to talk about. One, the lime trial. It's one of our early trials that's happened here at the farm, and year 1, 2 and 3 were somewhat expected results, but that's sort of taken a bit of a significant change. Can you talk a little bit about that, Trevor, what was noticed?
Yeah, look, it's pretty amazing, that lime trial, Al. That was put in on the very first year that the research farm was set up. There wasn't even any funding for that trial, so just Gippsland Ag put it in off our own back because we thought it was important work. And now what we're seeing is we've got the plots there. We've gone from nil lime, 2.5 tonne of lime, 5 tonne of lime, 7.5 tonne of lime, and then a calcipril plot as well. In the earlier days, there certainly wasn't a huge amount of differential between some of the yields, but now that we're 5 years in on that trial, we're just seeing this huge impact where the heavier applications of lime, like the 5 and the 7.5 tonne to the hectare, are probably giving us a 6 to 7 fold increase in productivity compared to the nil. So it just shows how much country is being held back on its productivity just due to basically lack of calcium and lack of pH. So
the theory is that those lighter applications are starting to run out of puff now, and is that correct?
They certainly have. That 2.5 tonne to the hectare actually gave quite a good response for the first couple of years, but now the 2.5 tonne is only 2 times what the nil is, whereas the 5 tonne is 6 times, and the 7.5 tonne is actually nearly 8 times. I think the other really interesting aspect was the calcipril actually gave a really good response for the first couple of years, but it appears as though all the available calcium has been used out of that system, because now that calcipril has dropped right down to about a 3-fold effect. So it's fallen substantially.
Now, it's important to note that this data was taken off a forage rape this year, but we've just recently planted an Italian rye. So what's the thought of planting the Italian rye now?
I think the Italian rye is going to be fantastic, because it's something that as producers we're all very used to using some rye grasses. With the great mower facilities, with the weighing and such that you've got here on the side, you'll be able to go in there 3 or 4 times through the growing season and get dry matter cuts off those sites, and we're going to have a great data set by the time we get to the end of 2025 on this.
Yeah, we've also got the drying oven on site now as well, so it takes a lot of the need to ship it off down the line and dry, so we can get that data quite easily and quickly, which is really important. The other thing we're looking at is growing more topsoils, and there's been some interesting observations that's happening. What can you tell us about the actual Growing More Topsoils trial and what we're starting to notice?
Yeah, so that Growing More Topsoils trial, really interesting work. So it's where we've had various different organisations from agronomists through to farmer groups have come up with some recommendations on what they would like to see as amendments to actually go into our topsoils to try and deepen our topsoils, along with some deep cultivation. And what we've seen in these early stages, which we're really only the second year in, is like we're now looking at perhaps with believe up to 140% increase in depth of topsoil where we've actually had these activities going on. So I think that's a pretty amazing response so early in to see an increase in depth of topsoil to that extent. And this year will be very interesting to see what you're growing on it, Al.
Yeah, well, again, we've got the ryegrass on top of that, sort of mimicking what we do in our commercial operations and feed it off. The other thing we're talking about with the ryegrass, there's a bit of work being done in the States on different types of soil types over there. You sent me a podcast. You want to just briefly explain what you heard?
Yeah, it's a bit of interesting stuff coming out. Like they've acknowledged for a long time in the States that they have what they call fragipan soils. I never knew what a fragipan soil was. And as I've sort of done a little bit more research into it, it's actually where they have a topsoil layer and then they actually go into a subsoil, which is actually quite an unhospitable type zone for root systems to grow through. And so probably quite similar to some of the Sodiki type subsoils that we run, through a lot of the red gum plains, where we just know that the root systems will get down to them and then they don't want to go any further. And a couple of researchers have been doing work on how they actually break these fragipan soils. And one of them has discovered that actually the exudates that come out of the root system of a ryegrass plant, but it has to be an Italian rye, is actually probably one of the most effective things at breaking down that fragipan soil. And they're starting to see some substantial yield increases in the following crop that they're growing, which is normally corn, on these soils where they've actually had Italian ryegrass in the rotation. So what better could we have than something that is a great thing to grow when you've got a lot of livestock around you, that actually also acknowledges that it actually has a great effect on the subsoil.
Now they know why this is happening, or just observe it happening so far?
So they've been working on it now for several years. The podcast that initially attracted my interest, this guy was actually, he was verging on a retired soil scientist, and it's something to do with the exudates that are coming out of those Italian ryegrasses, and how they effectively do just soften that very hard subsoil. And so I think there's a lot of work to be done, but yeah, pretty interesting to follow though.
Yeah, if you Google or look up Spotify Fragipan Soils podcast, you'll find the link. There's not too many, I think, that mention that name. So not frangipani, that's a flower, but fragipan. So we'll track that along. We'll be able to get multiple cuts off that with the mower and dryer and see how that goes as well. So
yeah, but it was going to be great to see. So relevant to our region.
Yeah, well, the price of land is getting more and more expensive, as I found out recently. And so if we can grow downwards, it was a theory behind that, rather than grow outwards. So
absolutely.
That'd be good. The last thing we're going to touch on briefly is the cereal trials. We do every year, variety and time of sowing, and now we've introduced a fungicide the last couple of years. What's going on in that space, Trev?
Yeah, so where the cereal trials are going in Al is, as you well know, is part of the rotation, which is a parcel of land that grew cereals 3 years ago, and now you're back in there again. And I think it had a vetch crop last year as a break crop.
Yeah, sunflowers and vetch actually.
Sunflowers and vetch, yep. So the country's in great shape for these trials to go in. So first and second plantings are in and up and out of the ground, I believe, and looking really well.
Yeah, well, the team was sowing in the dark at 9 o'clock on Thursday before Good Friday. I was very appreciative of them sticking around, but we hit a bit of rain over the weekend, so we're pretty keen to get it in. And 10 days ago we sowed it, and they're nearly 2 inches out of the ground already. So they've jumped away, and so far I can't spot a blade of ryegrass. So we're all pretty excited here, just to have a clean crop to start, because that was a pretty ordinary paddock 3 years ago. So.
And I guess it's the challenge with all that try and grow some cereals is we have one part of our farm that we're passionate about growing ryegrass in, and we've got another part of our farms that we're passionate about keeping ryegrass out of.
Yeah, well, we're planting ryegrass the fence over, and we're trying to kill ryegrass this side of the fence, so it's a difficult operation sometimes. Thursday this week, will be time of sowing 2 and time of sowing 1 for barley, so it's all happening in that space, the cereal space. So there should be some good results come off that as well. So
definitely.
Anything else you want to mention before we head off?
No, I think it's just been a colossal autumn for quite an area of East Gippsland. The guys down in Central Gippsland are doing it a little bit tougher, and South and West Gippsland are doing it really tough. So we feel for them. It's just been another one of those autumns where being proactive, having country ready to go, getting crops in the ground, getting that right fertility package up there, and really has set a lot of farmers up for some really good bodies of quality feed. So I'd say well done to everyone that's got out there and made it happen.
And thanks very much, Ken, for coming in.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you all again soon.
Thanks, Al.
A big thank you for tuning in today. And remember, if you have a question about today's episode or a topic you'd like us to cover, reach out to one of our many platforms and join the conversation. We're here because of your passion and commitment to agriculture. Together, we can build a stronger farming future.
This podcast is made possible by the Future Drought Fund Regional Drought Resilience Planning Program, co-funded by the Victorian and Australian governments.